So it started because we had no music in our church. Teresa and I knew each other quite well because we'd been playing guitar together, loosely playing guitar together.
We really did not know what we were doing.
You know, the priest was asking for, the choir's looking for new members, and
I had just started going there.
I didn't know any of them really that well.
That whole time at the folk choir was really a special time.
I had to go back to Maryland. My mother had passed away and my father had remarried, so I was going back to check on them. It was a 10-hour drive, so one time when I was practicing with Teresa, I'd said, I'm making this trip. It's going to be like 5 days. Would you be interested in coming along?
Yes! I want to go on a trip away for a week.
And then we invited Meg to go along, and then we invited Ann to go along, and we all said yes, and we were off on our first adventure.
Our kids were all kind of small, about the same age. I have two, and they were 12 and 10.
Becky was 11, DJ was 10, and Sam was 5, I think, at the time.
Dave was 12, Steve was 10, and Rachel was 6.
I had 9 children at home, and they ranged from probably 12 to 17.
And then that first trip, we just to tease them, we staged all these pictures. I was on a jet ski, and I was on
a motorcycle or
a
something?
Motorcycles, yeah.
Just staging pictures so I could take them home and show him, yes, we had a really nice time on vacation. I'm such a good mom.
The fascinating thing to me is that I really did not know any of you. And by the end of that however many days trip it was, I was like, I could hang with these guys. These guys are great. Girls are great.
It was very comfortable.
It was
very comfortable.
It was
right
very
from the
comfortable.
Yes.
You knew if things were getting crazy at home, it's like, okay, I'm about to jump off the edge here. I know I've got this trip coming up with my 3 other homies and that's when I can kind of let go and let loose, and it was just a chance to renew and recharge.
Recharge until you got home and you saw the pile of laundry.
Right,
hadn't been
true.
done. But other than
There's
that,
that.
it was
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
That was just the stuff you brought on the trip.
Thanks, Mary.
But it just all clicked from the very beginning. I think Cincinnati, though, was just kind of a, hey, we
Quick,
got to
last
do
minute,
this,
yeah.
or else if we don't do at least just a long weekend,
We may not.
we may never do it again.
So Mary does this thing where she can talk to anybody, but she was doing this scenario very kind of tongue-in-cheek, but the people she was talking to didn't realize it.
We were in town at the same time the Polka convention was in town. So we had stopped to get a bite to eat at local stand. There was a couple next to us. So I struck up a little conversation with them, and they were in town for the Polka convention, which we had been joking about for the last day or two. So when these ladies innocently walked back to town, I'm like, guys, come over here, meet my new friends from the Polka convention.
And I'm standing there while she's having this conversation, and I'm trying not to laugh.
Because I knew they would be put on the spot like, okay, now what do we do about this?
We went to the Museum of Art, yes, and as soon as you walk in, there's a male nude statue. We were having some fun. We were getting closer to the statue than we should have.
And I was taking a picture, if I remember
Yeah,
correctly.
right.
And they were around the statue doing inappropriate things to the statue. Not terrible, but comical. And all of a sudden they stopped doing this.
Oh, that's right.
That's
And
right.
they got real serious, and I'm like, come on, you guys. And I'm standing there trying to get them to do it, and the security guard is behind me. I got a little slap on the wrist for that one.
And then he kind of kept following us through the museum.
That's right.
And at one point, we're looking at this, Renaissance painting of, I don't know, Jesus being baptized or something, but I swear it looked like he was in a hot tub. So
That's what Mary said. Mary said, oh, look, it's Jesus in a hot tub.
We had a very dear friend at church named Jeannie Martin, and she had heard about our 2 trips, and she had a condo in Fort Myers Beach, and she invited us down to stay with her at the condo.
But she had just lost her husband.
Yes.
Remember?
Yes.
Tim died shortly
Yes,
before that.
that's
yeah.
right.
we would go to a restaurant and we would all order these coffee drinks, you know, mocha, whatever, with Kahlua or whatever. And Meg says, "Oh, I don't like those.
Those nasty coffee.
They're nasty."
And then one time they all got them, and I'm like, they're all like, these are just so good, you should try it. I'm like, all right. So I took a sip, and I'm like, oh, well, I'll have one of those nasty coffee drinks. Bring it on.
Kahlua heaven.
Remember we all went to get our hair done?
Yeah, we all went to get our hair done, and Jeannie, I don't want to say she was led a sheltered life, but she had
very
4 sons.
conservative.
4 sons and her husband that were probably a little overbearing, so she was kind of under their shadow a lot. So we went to get her hair done. We were all excited, and she had short hair. It was just very 50-ish.
Yeah,
50s,
yes,
50s.
yes.
Conservative.
Yeah, and the hairdresser said, "Oh, I know what I'm going to do with you." And then we said, "Oh, Jeannie, turn around. You're not going to look in the mirror till it's done." You know, and I
She sat there the
turned
whole
around
time like this.
Yeah, I
in the
turned
chair.
around because I didn't want to see it either. When the hairdresser was done, you know, she said, I turned around and I went, and then they turned Jeannie around. It was like, oh my gosh, this haircut was just beautiful.
She just looked stunning.
It was
She
very hip.
stunning.
It was very,
It was very
yes.
hip and modern, and she looked so much younger. And we even told her it looks like she should be like in charge in a boardroom or something. It was very, very sophisticated. She looked good. Yeah.
But the sad thing was when she got home, the adult sons were like, Mom, what'd you do that for? You know, it was just very sad.
So she grew it back out.
Yeah, so she grew back.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
We went on a dinner cruise after that, and you know, whatever we did on that trip, Jeannie had a wonderful time. You could tell she was having a wonderful time, and so I think she stepped into whatever this is that we have. But then when she went back home, she stepped out of what we had and never
Back into
came
her
back
old-
into it. Yep, yep.
That's the only time we've ever had anybody else with us. But she went with us. We stayed at her condo, and it was lovely.
It was.
My husband was trying to be a practical joker, and we were going to Florida. So he gave us all like little shoestrings for shoestring bikinis. It was a silly joke.
Oh, it was
He
cute though.
So 96 was Toronto.
And everybody's
Wah,
opinion
wah,
of that. We actually did stay in a really nice hotel.
The Hotel York.
Yes, it was very
A
lovely.
Royal York. It was the Royal York. I mean, the town was fine. I don't know. It's just something, the vibe. I can't.
No mojo. So we walked into, I think it was a very upscale Mexican restaurant, and it was still early, maybe 11 o'clock. And we walked in, and there was the hostess stand. So we walked up there. There was a person in the place, and we asked if we could get a bite to eat there. Well, do you have a reservation? And we're looking around like, okay, where's Alan Funt and Candid Camera? We're like, no, do we need one? And she's like, well, we can seat you. By the time we left, there was not a seat in the place. So obviously it was a very popular place.
And there was this Irish band playing at this pub, and we went to church and saw it he had an ad in the bulletin.
Yeah, but here's the thing. We listened to this guy.
He was good, by the way.
play.
Yes.
He was very good. And by the end of the night, he finished up, and we were talking with him, and we were a little ways from our hotel, and he offered to give us a ride back to our hotel
Instead of getting a cab.
instead of getting a cab. And we all kind of looked at each other, and we're like, well, there's 4 of us, so we did. And it was fine.
Yeah, he
and
wasn't
took us home.
threatening or, I mean, I didn't get a bad vibe from him
No,
at all.
which is why we agreed to it. But then afterwards, we're like, what were we
thinking.
Well, I promised my husband on these trips that I would always make safe decisions, because that was his big worry. We weren't going to be safe, 4 women alone. I said, no, don't worry about that. We're safe. We always make good decisions.
And my husband, his motto, his mantra always was trust no one. Every time we left, he's like, remember, trust no one. So we took a ride with a stranger.
With a stranger
To
our hotel.
But on
But we
that
never
note, may I say a quick thing about that
You may.
situation? We have kind of a running theme. We like to say we charm people. Because on every trip we go to, we end up endearing ourselves to someone like this musician. So I think that's goes along with that
Yeah.
saying, right? We
Yeah.
love we and we charm people.
This was year 5, so we thought we had to do something a little bigger and broader to celebrate. By that time, we're like, man, 5 years we've done this. This is pretty cool. So we decided to go to the Bahamas.
I had some kind of awful bug for over a week before. I was throwing up and doing all kinds of other things. I was saying to Mo, I just don't think I can go. And he kept saying, you're gonna go, you're gonna go. So I went, but I was laying in the back of the van we were driving to get to the airport. I mean, literally, I could.
He was laying in the back. She was laying in the back.
And going, we are not happy.
We are not
We
happy.
are, like, I was just so sick. We are not happy. As a matter of fact, the toilets in the hotel clogged one day, and the joke was it was because of me.
Also, at the same time we were there, the Texas bikini team was staying in the same hotel, and we were frequently mistaken for
For them,
members
for
of
them.
the bikini
Is it
team.
because you went around in bikinis or what?
Oh,
Just 'cause
we
you-
didn't have to. People would just look at us and say, obviously, you are with the bikini team.
They were all in line for a lunch one day or
Yeah.
something in their little bikinis, and so we kind of got at the tail end of their line, and we were like,
We're with them. And so we were just laying out on the beach, and the 3 of us, and I fell asleep. And when I woke up, these 2 were gone. I'm looking around, and people are like coming up wanting to braid my hair, and I'm like, where'd my friends go? They left me. I'm all alone.
When we were on the drive, I was kvetching a little bit about the fact that my youngest daughter, who's probably 17 at the time, she would call me, I think she was in college, freshman year, she would call me about the most ridiculous little things. So I was saying, I'm just kind of glad to get away and I'm going to have a little break from this. So we had gone out, the 3 of us, because Ann still wasn't feeling well. And we get back to the room and Ann lifts her head and she's going, Katie called you. So I'm like, are you even kidding me? We're in the Bahamas. So I don't know how I called her back because I don't think we had cell phones. And it turns out Katie called me back to tell me there was something wrong with her oil. And she knew I was in the Bahamas. And I'm like, Katie, I'm in the Bahamas. What do you want me to do about this? Call Dad. He's at home. So they were like laughing hysterically because they were hearing my stories about Katie, but it didn't take long for them to get an actual auditory about what was really going on in my life.
that's true.
Oh, but we have to tell about on the way home. When we were driving home from Cincinnati, okay, so we flew back into Cincinnati, we're driving the van. We're almost back and the muffler starts to fall off of her van, and it's dragging on on I-71, sparks are flying.
We had you get out and follow the van to see if it was sparking.
Oh yeah, like I'm hanging out,
Yeah,
I think
we're
trying.
driving along and she's running behind the van.
I'm like looking underneath going, yeah, that's not good, that's not good. So fortunately our exit was nearby, so we get off the exit and out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And there's a little gas station there, so we pull over into the gas station and we're looking at it, and there's this guy there in a pickup truck. And he sees us kind of looking around and he's like, hey, ladies need some help? And we said, well, the muffler's kind of falling off our car. And he's like, oh, he goes, let me take a look at that. And he says, I've got a rope in my car. I can just, whip that up for you and you can be on your way. And so he gets under there with the rope and he comes out from underneath. He's got this thing. It's like
pelt.
flat. It's a pelt. It's a raccoon or a rabbit or something that when the muffler was dragging, it scraped it off the freeway and it got caught under there. And he's like, I found this under here. And it was like paper
cardboard,
thin,
right.
like cardboard. And he says, do you want it? We're like,
No,
it's okay. And so he goes, he just folds it up like this and chucks it in the trash, ties up our muffler, and we're on our way. And we're like, oh, what if that was Jesus? I forgot about that. Right there at the right time. And he fixed our muffler. He did. Vegas. Vegas is one of those places where it's like, yeah, you got to do it at least once. Not for a whole week, just for maybe 3 days or 4 days or whatever, but we went to a show. We did gambling. I just remembered the streets being littered with ads for strip clubs.
Right.
And didn't that where we ran into the group of guys and we were teasing them about their suitcases?
Fag bag, and we'd heard them calling them fag bags, and then at some point, I don't
We
know.
charmed them.
Yes, and they were young guys, and somebody said something about their bag, and I said, "Oh yeah, I think that's your fag bag."
And then they ended up on the flight home
Yes,
with us.
they were, and then we made hand puppets
out of the barf bags in the pocket of the airplane.
because they were sitting right in front of us, and
But we played a lot. It's lots of fun. That's the
Oh,
first time we
lots of
thought we were
fun.
at lots of fun where you could gamble for a quarter.
they were calling us the Amish ladies from
They
Ohio.
did, because we were from Ohio,
Yep.
so
Yes.
they assumed that we were all Amish. Because so many Amish come to Vegas.
You know what? It was
Stomp.
That was really good. That was really
And
good.
Jim Schwope had told you that we'd get a better seat if you tipped him. So I think you
No,
gave him.
not Jim, my mother.
Oh,
my mother
whoever.
who went to
So
Las Vegas a
so
lot.
Teresa got out a $20 bill and gave it to the guy seating us, and we got
maitre d'.
right next to the stage.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
great.
we had good seats.
It was a
Like
great
we
show.
were sitting here and they were stomping
Right.
right here.
Right.
Number 7, one of our favorites, Scottsdale, Arizona, 1999. Just the atmosphere, the scenery, the mountains and the
very peaceful and
canyons. And
We drove up to Sedona and we went in to get a tour of the rocks and the Indian paintings, what are they called? Etchings. Yeah. And our tour guide was yummy. He was Mike Peach.
yummy.
What makes a driver yummy?
He was very handsome and very attractive
And intelligent.
and intelligent.
Yeah.
Yes,
Well
and
spoken.
intelligent. So we really enjoyed the tour.
Some of us more than others.
So, yeah, of course, it's all in fun. So.
Right.
You have to say that for your family. I want to make sure I'm on you.
Right. That's when we went tubing.
Oh yes.
about
That
the-
was the best.
Out of season. We found some river or something, we wanted to go tubing down this river. We thought, okay, that'll be fun. So we went to a Walmart to buy like flip-flops so we could go tubing. So we go into Walmart and we're looking around, we can't find them, and we asked one of the workers, where are your flip-flops? Okay, now mind you, this is September in Arizona, it's like 98 degrees, and she's like, oh, well, you're really lucky because this is the last day that we're going to have these out. They're on an end cap because we're out of season now. It's 98 degrees. But so we managed to get our flip-flops and then went tubing.
That was fun.
And that was great fun.
It was very beautiful.
It was.
The big joke on that trip was it's hot, but it's a dry heat.
Dry heat.
A dry heat.
Yeah.
But then we went to the restaurant and it was raining.
Oh, that's
The
right.
TP Tap Room.
CP Tap Room, and it rained. It's the middle of the desert. It started raining, and then we kept saying, well,
It's a
it may
dry.
be raining, but it's a dry rain.
New Orleans, September of 2000.
My father's wife had a cousin that lived down there, and so when we got there, he had his own personal waiter at Mr. B's that he was going to have wait on us and take care of us. Then we went to visit Milton and his friend Stephen, which was a very cool house, and they liked us enough. They invited us there for drinks, and then we took Milton. Stephen wasn't feeling up to being social, so we went to a very cool place and had dinner.
Jazz, was
So-
that the jazz place?
Yes, yes, yep.
And we got introduced by those gentlemen. They said, "Do you want a half?" We're going to have cocktails. We were at their house. Would you like a half and half? And we're like, we don't know what that is. It's a martini with half vodka, half gin, and that's just kind of somewhat become a thing for me. I don't know if you guys still do that, but I like it that way.
And I think that's the first time they served Bombay Sapphire.
Oh yes, their house was amazing, historic. I think it was on the register, wasn't it, Mary?
It was an
think so.
old Ursuline
That's right.
convent. Both of these gentlemen are now deceased, and so that place moved on to different hands, but it was a very cool experience. You had to go outside to walk upstairs to that third floor, which was their living area. It was just a very,
It had balconies surrounding this courtyard, just lush gardens and things, and they had a really extensive art collection.
I remember that.
Gorgeous.
One of my most humorous recollections of that trip is we stayed in the Garden District, I think it was.
Yes.
And we forgot about the fact that there was a time change involved, and I forget which direction it was. I think it was in our favor. But the next morning we'd gotten in late. I think you guys were sleeping upstairs in a loft. We were downstairs, and I woke up, and it was like maybe 10 minutes before they were going to close the breakfast and the coffee downstairs. So I said to Teresa, I said, hey, Teresa, it's like 10 till 9, which really it was 10 till 8. And she says, we'll go downstairs and get stuff for us then.
Go get our coffee.
Yes, you did. And I'm just like, okay. So I threw on my little bathrobe, and this was our first night here, so I didn't know the lay of the land. So I go outside the door, and this whole courtyard is filled with people all dressed. And here I am in my PJs, and my teeth aren't brushed. So then I'm like knocking on the door for her to let me back in so I could throw on some clothes. Then in the meantime, we realized we still had an hour, so it wasn't just the 10 minutes, but yeah. We'll go get us something. Let's say she can be very persuasive.
Yes. She's practical.
She's practical. You need to get the coffee.
I'm working on it.
It was also where we were riding the trolley, and
Oh gosh, yes.
the driver stops in the middle of a big intersection, if I remember correctly, stops the trolley, gets out to get a hot dog at a convenience store, and we're all sitting in this trolley like, what are you doing? What?
It was weird.
Yeah.
And that was when we were in the taxi to go back to the airport to leave. That is when the taxi driver said, oh, are you ladies here for the porn convention?
Right. It was like he was very serious when he asked it, but we were all like,
So I'm going to say one of the best memories of any trip was we had Sunday Mass and brunch afterwards. And so we had found this brunch at a Court of Two Sisters. They had mimosas, they had live jazz playing. And so we was like, oh, this is great. So now, as tomorrow, we're going to Mass and a Sunday brunch afterwards. So we try to find very cool places to do a nice Sunday brunch.
2001. We were going to go to Boston and Salem and September 18th or so. So obviously, September 11th happened. We were supposed to fly into Boston, which was one of the airports that Logan Airport, one of the planes that crashed into the Twin Towers had originated from there. So we're like, we're not getting on an airplane. We were working, we've already got the time off, what are we going to do? And Anne came through for that one.
we have friends that have had a condo in the Carolinas, and Mo and I had taken the kids there several years in a row for a trip. So I said, let me call them and see if we could do that for that period of time. And they said, sure, it was open. They didn't have anybody staying there. And so we drove down, and that was our trip that year, Sunset Beach, North Carolina. It was a lovely trip.
It was lovely.
It was.
Krabby Oddwaters, best Bloody Marys, because Anne had said we had just gotten the road trip. She knew this seafood place to go to, and George didn't like seafood. So we decided, okay, perfect, because we all like seafood. We go there. I didn't really feel like a glass of wine, so I thought, ooh, I think I'm going to get a Bloody Mary. Well, I ordered it, and everybody's like, ooh, I think that sounds really good. Best Bloody Marys.
They really are.
My, they just hit the spot that day.
San Francisco, 2002, I would say that would be one of our favorite destinations. Well, you had already been there, right?
Yes.
Because we stayed in a hotel that you had been in, so you kind of found that
Yes,
for us.
and so this place was at the base of Lombard Street, which is the crookedest street, and it was within reasonable walking distance of going down to, the bay. We stayed it was a Comfort Inn, it was a modest hotel, but we stayed, I think we stayed up on a level where you could see the Golden Gate Bridge out the window,
Right.
and Alcatraz too. So very cool place.
There were a lot of things on that trip that were very
Yeah,
interesting.
very
and-
Cool.
And while we were in San Francisco, the Fringe Festival was going on. This is S&M.
Well, it had been at this whatever park they had held it at, and it was over. This was at like Sunday afternoon, and we were standing at a bus stop, waiting on a bus. And so we're just waiting at this bus stop, and we see all these people coming, and in all various states of leather and fringe and whatnot. And
Dog chains.
Dog chains, yeah, that was
studded
weird.
collars, and a guy leading a woman. he was all in leather with the studded collar, and the woman had the studded collar, but she was on a leash on all fours, like she was a dog. And a guy started walking toward us in chaps, and I'm like, oh, okay. And then as he went by and we looked around, we realized they were assless chaps. But one of the best Mass experiences we had. So we find this little church that's not far from our hotel, and we walk there. And when we get in there, we realize it's a Korean congregation, and they're all deaf.
Hey,
We're
it's
game,
church.
let's do it. So they're, signing everything through the Mass, and there are some hearing people in there. And at one point when they got to the, and they're so nice.
They were very
They were so
friendly.
welcoming,
Oh my gosh.
and because we sort of stood out like sore thumbs. And during the sign of peace, the lady sitting in front of us who was hearing turned around and she said, "This is going to take a while." We're like, cool.
But then after communion, the priest was up there, and he's talking and the woman's signing, and he said, "Yes, we'd like to welcome any visitors if you would want to stand up." And we didn't say anything. We were just sitting there. We didn't say anything. And, someone else stood up and someone else stood up. And then the woman across the pew, she stood up and she's pointing at us. So we had to stand up and say what we were doing there. They were very nice and very well, but it was such an experience.
It was great.
Yes.
Then we had Sunday brunch at the Cliff House, which doesn't exist anymore, but it's this restaurant that overlooks the Pacific Ocean. Gorgeous, nice popovers.
So delicious.
It-
Beth.
Bloody Marys.
I mean, you were literally right
the
almost
cliff.
looked like you were on the water almost.
'Cause it's
from
called the
all the
Cliff House.
windows, and yeah, it was very lovely.
Beautiful. And then we did a bus tour to the Muir Woods, and that's where we went to have wine at this little place, and they took us back through the restaurant, through a little garden area in the back, and there were these two guys back there just kind of playing chess and
Sausalito, yeah.
Sausalito.
It's like something out of a movie. It was
Yeah.
really neat.
And so when we got back, we found this Irish pub that we went in that night for a drink. So we go in there, and half the people that were on our bus tour were in this bar, and there was an Asian guy in the Irish bar playing John Denver tunes, and it was kind of a sports bar, and they were showing ice skating. So it was
It was so surreal.
quite
It
a
was
conglomeration of cultures.
But the fact, what still freaks me out is the fact that we were with these people on this tour all day and then said our goodbyes, and most of us end up at
ended
the
up-
same bar. It could have been any bar, a million bars.
It's San Francisco.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So we all sat together and we
We all
laughed.
sat
and
together, yeah.
One of the fellows was British, and I said something like, "I just love your small British films," and he was like, "Excuse me." Like I had been, was a negative comment. Insulting, and I felt really bad.
Number 11 is we returned to Ocean City. This was 2003, and also to Annapolis. So my son went to the Naval Academy in Annapolis. So he was there at the time, and we went to visit him. We saw there like noon, they always have a big noon formation where the whole brigade lines up and whatnot, and they march into lunch. And you can eat with the midshipmen if you want, if you've prearranged it. So we had lunch with him at this big table for like 15 with all these other mids, just for the experience, because the food was like,
Yeah, you got a choice of green jello or yellow jello
yeah.
or red
Well,
jello.
they had this, aluminum pan about yay big sitting on the table with this green stuff in it, and no one really touched it. And then the lunch was over, and I asked my son, I'm like, "Matt, is that like Jell-O? Why didn't anybody eat that?" And he's like, "Because that's what we used to clean the tables."
Oh,
Like, this was the trip where we did not charm our host.
that's right. We did not.
Annapolis has a ton of really lovely bed and breakfasts, because my husband and I had stayed in several throughout our son's 4-year stint there. But this one we found was run by a couple from Ohio. So we thought, oh, of course, this is going to be awesome. And so we thought, we're really going to charm them this time. So we took a hostess gift. We took some Buckeyes, the chocolate peanut butter Buckeyes. The real way to make Buckeyes is you roll the peanut butter ball and you dip it almost all the way in chocolate, okay? Anthony Thomas, which is a famous candy manufacturer in Ohio, makes massive amounts of Buckeyes, but they don't do it right. They like dip the whole thing in and then like put a, I don't know, it's made a little differently. So we called them faux Buckeyes, or we shortened it to
Oh, yeah.
Buckeyes. Which we thought was quite humorous. So anyway, we go to this, we check in at the bed and breakfast, and the woman and her husband was sort of surly. He was not real charming. And we're like, here, we're from Ohio, you're from Ohio, here's these Buckeyes, and they're like, okay. And then the woman was asking us, okay, so tomorrow morning, I'll serve breakfast between this time and this time. Do you have any dietary restrictions that I should know about, or is there anything that you don't like that I should avoid? And I said, I'm really not fond of raisins or of coconut. And she's like, okay. And then that night in there, they had a nice big dining room, so we played Nerds, our card game, which we get a little raucous and whatever. And I don't know, did she say something that night, or we just got the impression that night that they weren't really happy? I thought we were making too much noise or something. I don't know. Anyway, the next morning we come down for breakfast, and she's got this breakfast casserole, and it is full of raisins.
It just got a negative vibe.
Passive-aggressive kind of vibe there,
Yeah.
so I don't know.
It was strange.
2004, we're back in Cincinnati. I think now we're getting into the time where maybe kids,
Weddings
and wedding expenses,
Yeah.
so we're
Yes.
like, let's just scale it down a little bit this year.
We were late getting in that night. This man was not happy with us. So I think our charm, and maybe it's because we're getting older now, charm is kind of wearing off a little bit. So we stayed in this carriage house, and one of the nights we were there was like gunshots going off, like somewhere in the vicinity of our carriage house.
His house was like a little museum, and he had all these collections of dolls and interesting things in these curio cabinets, and it was just a strange
Kind of
vibe.
creepy.
Yeah.
But again, we were together and we
Made
that
the
was
most of it.
important.
Yeah.
Number 13, Chicago, 2005.
Good one.
Yeah, my son lived in Chicago with his wife, and when we flew in, he picked us up from the airport. And he's driving through Chicago, and it's like it's not the kind of driver you were trained to be, but he became a city driver. So he's zigging and zagging, hitting his horn.
We saw the Bean. We went to the top of the
We went to a
Sears Tower,
show.
had drinks. We went to a show.
We went on an architectural riverboat tour.
Yeah, that was
Remember
cool.
that?
I remember that.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Oh, we saw John Cusack, didn't we?
No,
No,
we
no,
stayed at the hotel,
hotel.
where he
Oh.
says.
Where he
John
stayed,
Cusack
yes.
recommended this hotel,
Yeah.
which
And
I
think
thought
he
was
did
kind of a
that.
dive. No, where did we see David Schwimmer?
There, yes.
Yeah, that was it. Okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
we saw David
Wrong
Schwimmer,
wrong
yeah.
celebrity.
Where was he?
Just walking on the street.
This is 2006. We decided to take our New England trip that we were going to take in 2001. We already had it planned out, so we just sort of shifted it. And we rented a car and we drove down to Boston and various points. We went to a witch trial, yeah.
People walking the streets dressed up as witches and whatnot. Yeah.
Oh, and we saw Plymouth Rock.
Which is about this big. That was the biggest
so
disappointment.
Underwhelming. It was like, oh, Plymouth Rock. You read about it as a kid. Let's go see it. And it's this. There's this hole, and there's this rock like this right there, and it's just a rock.
That's it.
And somebody carved 1620 in it.
All the shops around there were super commercialized. They all had the same stuff in them. It was the most disappointing place.
So if I could interject and back up a little bit, Joe, we, on probably most of our trips, the Columbus Dispatch, if you took the Columbus Dispatch with you and you wherever you went, you posed with that, and the object is you're going to get your picture in their little travel section with a little blurb about you. So all
a
of
travel
these,
tip.
yes, all of these places that we had been going for all of these years, we took our little dispatch. Never, ever, ever did we get our picture in the paper?
I worked at the Dispatch, and so, and I would keep submitting these pictures, of us holding the newspaper to get in the travel section, and you'd have to, give your names. Never made it. So we go to this trip. I was not working there at the time, so I thought, maybe they don't want to put me in there or something. So I put my maiden name in. I listed my maiden name in there, and also, I had taken in order for me to make this trip work with my vacation, I took a sick day. One of the days was a sick day. And wouldn't you know, that's the year that our picture made it in the paper. So here I am in this picture on vacation when I'm sick, but it was under my maiden name, so I never got called out on it. So.
That was very good.
Number 15, New York City, 2007.
That was a good one.
We saw Young Frankenstein, which was hilarious, and we saw Joan Rivers in the lobby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's about that tall.
So I had a daughter-in-law and my son who'd had several miscarriages, and my daughter-in-law is pregnant and due in January, and we were there a couple of days, and I got a call that Megan's water had broken. She was in the hospital, so I debated going home, and my son was like, well, there's nothing you can do. So I think the day we left, I drove right to Bowling Green, and I think my granddaughter was born a couple days later, 2 months premature, 3 pounds, 2 ounces, and she's a beautifully healthy 15-year-old now. Little miracle.
That's where we saw
We went into that church.
that's right.
The church.
Where the firemen that were first responders they'd go in there to lay down and take a break. It was fascinating.
all kind of patches, from there.
Yeah.
And the church pews were all scratched up and marked up because these people would just come in there exhausted and they'd just collapse with all their gear still on. Wow. Their air tanks and everything, and
It was moving.
It was very moving. Yes.
We went to Ellis Island. on
Ellis
that trip.
Island. ate
We did
oysters.
touristy stuff.
Oysters at the Grand Central
Central Station.
Station.
Oh,
yeah.
we visited your cousin.
My cousin played the piano for the Metropolitan Opera, and they live in New York. And so we visited with them in their little apartment on 55th Street. They lived in a third floor condo, and I don't think it was as big as this room. And
They had a grand piano in
she
there.
had a grand piano in there, and that was interesting.
That was interesting.
But that's when we went to Little Italy, right?
Yes.
Oh, that
There you
was
go.
little.
There you go.
What was the name of the restaurant?
Umberto's Clam House.
Okay. So apparently this is a well-known
Mafia hangout.
Mafia hangout. How did we even end up in conversation with those guys? Do you remember?
Because they walked in, and we were over there. I don't know how we ended up in conversation with them, but we were trying to get a picture.
Yeah.
Like whole Sopranos vibe
Yeah.
going
Yes.
on. Yeah.
So somehow we got in conversation, and we had been drinking at this point, which is a shocking surprise.
So unusual.
But I said to one of them at one point, "Are you Catholic?" And I just don't even remember his
Well,
reaction.
weren't they from Youngstown? Or they had
I don't
family
remember.
in Youngstown?
That may have been what it
Maybe,
was
yeah.
or something. But then these guys start laughing like, did you just ask him?
Did you just really ask that? Yeah. And then we wanted to take a picture of us or something, but like they were in the background.
We wanted them in the
Yeah,
back.
we did.
And we kept trying to position ourselves.
And I mean, they kept like
Innocently.
shifting and because too many
that was
If
skeletons.
we would have been 4 men, we might have been rubbed out.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
First time we were in New York, my jewelry was stolen by one of the housekeeping people. Well, it was I had it in a little pouch in my suitcase that was sitting on the, the suitcase was closed, it wasn't zipped. There was not a tape in the room, but the supervisor at the hotel, she questioned the maid that had been assigned to that room, and the maid actually said, "Oh, well, I saw it sitting out and I took it for safekeeping," which it was not sitting out. And it wasn't anything valuable or, it was just kind of
It
cheap
was like the
stuff.
Hope Diamond.
Yeah. She gave the jewelry back and probably got fired. And Teresa's cousin, this was the same year that we visited Teresa's cousin, was kind enough to go back to the hotel and pick it up for me because we had left by then. We were back home.
Well,
But
he
then-
felt bad that happened in his city because
right,
he
right.
felt bad about that. So he wanted to make it right.
September of 2008, we went to Cleveland again because of
Something.
weddings, and we decided to shorten it up this time. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
We did that.
Yeah. Tour of some of
art
the-
museum.
from the Vatican.
Yes.
or something.
Vatican,
Yeah.
okay.
We went on that too.
We went to that dinner theater Sinatra.
Yeah, that was
show.
fun. That was great. A great evening, and it was the MC or the host or something afterwards said, "We've got a guy doing comedy across the hall.
right.
Do you guys want to go? You want me to let you in?" So that was fun. So we charmed him
about that.
evidently, and we watched the end of that guy's shtick. As a matter of fact, that evening they called a couple people up to the stage at the dinner theater, and I went up there to be ridiculous and did a little something. I don't remember what. But I remember the comedian, he had this one bit he did talking about Hitler, and he goes, "Don't you think Hitler would have been so much more approachable if his first name was Chip? Chip Hitler." And that has stuck with me ever since.
And Chip Hitler then comes up in a lot of our conversations.
Yes, that's a big one.
Number 17, we took a cruise and we went to Bermuda. We flew to Newark, New Jersey, and boarded the ship and cruised straight to Bermuda. It was like a one-stop kind of deal.
Having grown up in the 70s, I couldn't do that without thinking about the Bermuda Triangle.
Right.
That doesn't figure into your.
I kept
Well, here we are, so
I think we did.
I think we're okay.
Yeah, we made it through.
We were charming enough for the Bermudans to take us up in their
Okay.
triangle.
So you-
Lots of men in shorts.
Yeah, that was
and knee
so-
socks.
Knee socks and ties and dress shirts. I thought
Yes.
that was very
It
fascinating.
was, and they're like pastels.
Yeah,
Pinks
yes,
and
yes,
blues.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a little bit of a different culture. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you were seasick.
I was
a lot
seasick, yeah, a lot.
on the ship,
So
but you got acupuncture.
I did. I went. They said acupuncture would cure it, and it helped a lot. It didn't really cure it, but it helped a lot so that I could get around. So
This was Royal Caribbean, and interesting side note, my husband and I just came back from a cruise, a Royal Caribbean cruise, beginning of October in Canada, up Maine and east coast of Canada, and I swear it was the same ship, Voyager of the Seas. I'm walking around this ship like, I remember this lounge, I remember this. I swear it was the same one that we were
kinda
on.
neat.
In Disney World, 2010, thanks to our good friend Mary, whose husband is a Disney freak, okay. But Mary had our schedule down. It was very efficient.
Yeah, it was.
We used to go with our kids and grandkids, and so, again, I'm probably Switzerland too often. I just let them plan the trip because it's like, I don't care where I'm going, just show me where to show up and I'm there. So we were actually going that same year, I think a few weeks after their trip. So this trip was not my idea. I never had an opportunity to put into practice. We go here, then we go there, then we go there, so we get everything done. So that was nice for me because I knew what I was doing, and we got there and we got our stuff done, and then we made it back so we could swim in the afternoon, and it was a much more relaxed pace than I was used to.
Yeah, I bet. And that's where the woman was in the pool. There was a young gal with an older guy, and she had the biggest zombas ever, obviously not real. And it was just an anomaly. We were just mesmerized.
It's like built-in floaties. But we did a different park every day, and this was in June. It was super hot and humid,
Oh, it was hot.
but we did Fast Pass. It was very different to be there without kids,
Yeah,
without
it
little
was.
kids.
It was fun.
And to watch the families that were there with kids and they're screaming and crying
And we just had to deal with us screaming and crying.
Yeah. Well, we were walking back to our hotel one night, and I think we were all kind of pooped out, and it was quite a walk in the area we were in. And one of the young kids that works, in that area, started to drive by in his little utility vehicle, and we were like, "Can we have a ride?" So all four of us jumped onto his little.
there was a guy and a girl.
Oh, okay. Anyway, they let us hop on, and they drove us back to our We charmed them.
All right, number 19, Tybee Island in Savannah, Georgia,
that was a nice
2011. That was one of our top, and it's right off the coast of Savannah. Sandra Bullock apparently has a house on Tybee, so we rented bikes and we rode around the island, and we were pretty sure we found her house. So we called for her, and she did not.
She didn't respond.
But it was beautiful. We had a very kind of a unique hotel. It was upstairs, and it was like 2 big rooms on either side of a central room, and then there was a balcony at the front of the central room that looked out to the beach, but on either side there were like hotels, but we had a clear view from our balcony out to the beach.
Water is beautiful.
Yeah, and then every morning there was a young man that worked at the hotel that would set up beach chairs and umbrellas for us, so he was our little beach boy, pool
Yeah,
boy.
it was very nice.
And then we would go to Savannah and do like the ghost tour and the cooking class.
Oh yeah.
She cooked.
Oh.
We sat around like an island, and she had her stove and stuff there, and
And
so
she was cooking with the recipe, and then she'd pass out.
and then we got to eat it.
we
So
got to eat it.
But
yeah.
in the meantime, I recognized her.
Oh, that's
and
right.
it turns out she was a waitress in Worcester that had just recently moved down to Savannah.
Which is where Mary lives.
Yeah, it was amazing.
and then we went to dinner at the restaurant where she worked, and she was our
She was our waitress.
server.
That was fun.
yeah.
Good food. We charmed the cooking class teacher. It always
It's always-
is. It's always
comes
that. Yeah.
back to
Yeah.
charm.
Or
Okay.
so we think.
Yeah.
Okay.
We liked the South very much, that area. So the next year, number 20, we went to Charleston, South Carolina in 2012. We had a cool little apartment that we stayed in. We did a
food
progressive-
tour.
Yeah.
Progressive food tour.
Yeah.
And the guy wasn't that charming. He was.
No.
Oh God.
And he didn't like Notre Dame.
I got the impression this was a young guy that was thinking he's going to make it big in this, he's going to do this business, and he turned out to be kind of an interesting dude. One restaurant we were at, we were finishing our meal, and he would leave us alone to eat most of the time, but then at the end of the meal he'd come in and get us to move us to the next place. But he had a drink in his hand, and
Yes.
when we were finishing our meal, and he sits it down on my plate and starts talking about this and that. I mean, it was just really odd. It was just really odd.
That's where we ate, and I seem to be the only one who remembers this. We went to one night we went to a restaurant, and it was very fancy, and they had one of those fixed price meals. And we all ate this, and I said, how great this is. The food is really good. And the waitress came over and said, do you want to go to the kitchen and see the chef? And we agreed. And you don't remember, nobody remembers this. I swear, no.
Is that part of the ghost tour?
No.
That was the year before.
And we went into the kitchen, and there's like 4 or 5 of the chefs there cooking, and we all just we all clapped.
Oh my gosh, I did not remember that.
I like the story. That's
do
good.
too.
It's a great,
Gosh, I wish I did remember.
it's a great
St. Augustine, Florida, number 21, June of 2013. First stop was the Fountain of Youth, which obviously worked. It was a very nice area.
Yes, but I do have to say, as I said the other night, based on our Tybee experience, where we had a beautiful view of the beach,
true.
this was supposed to be a beach condo, and it was like, I can't even say I'm shorter, so I'm going to take myself out of the picture, but there wasn't even essence of beach if you stood on your tippy toes that you could see. So that was a little disappointing, but it was connected with the St. Francis Inn, which is a beautiful bed and breakfast in town, and so you got to use the amenities of the St. Francis Inn. We could go in there and have breakfast. We just needed to let them know. They had chairs that we could put out on the beach if we could find the beach from where we were. It was. I love St. Augustine.
Yeah.
I think we found a place called Aunt Kate's Dockside Diner,
Oh, I remember that.
and they had the fried green tomatoes. Do you remember that? We were out like on the water, and it was just
Beautiful.
lovely, just very relaxing, and
That's
And
the trip
time.
we saw Elvis, right?
Yes, we did. We saw Elvis. My son, the one that was at the Naval Academy, gosh, this is like 10 years after that. So by this time now, he's married and he's in the Navy as his career, and he's stationed in Jacksonville, Florida, which is right next to St. Augustine. So I think it worked out that on our way back to the airport or something, we stopped by their house to visit so I could see my grandkids briefly. But we did go to Elvis impersonator performance because my daughter-in-law is a big Elvis fan. So we went with them to see Elvis, and I think we were the youngest ones.
Oh yeah, I'm
in
sure
there,
we were. It was a
probably.
very odd experience.
Yeah, it was
No,
weird.
that's right. I don't remember that.
don't?
No.
Back to New York City. You can never go wrong with New York City. Plenty to
Right.
do there. We saw Once, the production of Once, in a very cool small theater, and we got to go up on the stage during intermission.
You guys did. I didn't. I was in the
Oh,
bathroom.
you went to the bathroom. The,
The
set
bar
is a
is up
bar, so during intermission they invite you to come up and you can get your drink at the bar. So
So, yeah. And I
But you
just
have
remember
gone to
we
the
went up, we got our drink, and we turned around, and it's like this, all the lights are on, and you could see all the seats where everybody, like you were on stage.
I was like,
It was so cool. I know, I'm on stage
on
Broadway.
but by that time the 9/11 museum had been completed, and we spent an afternoon there,
Yeah, that was something.
which was
Oh, emotional. The pieces that they had in there
yeah.
were so, like one of the escalators, they had part of that from the building, and there was a big clump of metal on one wall, and you think from the building, and you think, gosh, I wonder what's in that big clump of metal. You know what I mean? It was very,
Mangled fire trucks, and it's on the original site, but it's underground, so you go down, 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 and the lowest level is, there's like a separate door, and they say, it says you can choose to go in here or not, but it's much more personal items, and there's recordings that you can listen to if you want, and it's just, it was emotionally just draining.
it was.
Oof.
I'm glad.
Yes,
I'm glad.
oh, I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
every
it was an- yeah.
American should
Yeah, I
do
do.
that, but man, it's rough. 23, Niagara-on-the-Lake, Ontario, Canada. This is where we ran into trouble with border guards,
Oh, yeah.
both coming and going. It's Niagara Falls. There's an American side and a Canadian side, so we chose the Canadian side because of the Stratford Festival, the big theater festival that goes on there every year. On our way to cross the border, you had to show your passports at one spot, and then like up ahead was a toll booth. So I was driving, and so they all hand me their passports, and I'm trying to, be organized and have everything ready. So I have my passports, all our passports in the hand, and the money for the toll, and to go up to the border guard, and I just handed it to her. Now, Canadians I thought were supposed to be, really nice and hey, friendly, and she thought I was trying to bribe her because I had the money for the toll in my hand with the passports. I mean, I don't know what I could.
$5.
It's like I'm like, what? How far am I going to get on $5?
away.
You need to put that away.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, sorry. On the way back, we had bought some wine at a winery, and so you have to declare things. And so we get up to the border, and it's like a series of 3 stop signs before you get to the booth where the person is. And there's several lanes. And so we're looking up and down, and I can't really tell. Some people are stopped in the middle lane, at the middle sign, and some are back here, and some are up there, and I'm not really sure where we're supposed to stop. I'm like, do I go? And of course, these guys are no help. Yeah, go ahead. No, I think you should stay. No, maybe we should go ahead. I just drive right up to the booth, and the guard there is this young guy, and he's like, ma'am, you were supposed to stop back there. I'm like, I'm sorry. He goes, you ladies travel much?
And the joke of that is, yes,
Yeah,
we do,
actually, we
young
do.
man.
But then we had extra alcohol. Yes, we got in trouble for that too. That's when he said, "Do you ladies travel much?" Because we were well over whatever
had to
the
declare what
limits
we had.
that we.
Oh, that's right. I didn't remember that.
Yeah,
But
Yeah.
Niagara is very beautiful. It's a really quaint little.
like an English
Yeah.
town.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, very, very nice. A lot of bed and breakfasts and good restaurants. And it was a nice find. Mary, you knew about it, didn't you?
Yep.
You're the one that came up with that trip.
Yep.
It was
And
good.
we had high tea.
High
Oh,
tea, that's
high
right.
tea. You got all dressed up.
And the B&B we stayed in. The man that ran it or owned it was a former diplomat,
Oh, that's right.
older gentleman, and he was so fun, and he would make us these amazing breakfasts, and he would go out to his back porch patio where he had little edible flowers he was growing, and he picked them every morning and put a couple on our plate for breakfast. And
Had coffee outside our rooms
yeah,
every morning.
and in the evening then he would be sitting out on his porch having a whiskey or whatever he was drinking, and so we'd join him and have good conversation, and he was just charming. He was well spoken
Yes.
and just
And he was a widow, and his wife actually was the one that had wanted to open the bed and breakfast.
Oh, that's right.
And she died, and so I don't remember how long before that she had passed away, but he kept the bed and breakfast going for however long he was keeping it going, so.
We were still keeping with the Canadian theme for trip number 24 to Quebec City in Quebec, which was beautiful. It
was. That was
Beautiful
fun.
town.
That was a good one.
Everybody was bilingual, very heavy French influence. We found a great place for breakfast every morning with French pastries and
Yeah, we just did some tours and, found the restaurants and the free drum show that we
That
found.
was so good.
Yeah.
oh yes.
What was do you remember was it some kind of event they had going on or something?
Well, we came down these steps and there was like this little, remember the little alley?
Yeah.
And then they had all these shops on the side.
Yeah.
And then they had that sign out front, free at 6 o'clock. They were just playing all kinds of
percussion.
yeah.
But they would do things like bang on their drum and then throw a stick and the other one would catch it. I mean, it was very
Yeah,
it was-
choreographed.
It was very choreographed, but they were very good, and we paid nothing for that, so that was nice.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
Had some poutine, cheese curds with gravy and French fries.
It's supposed to be a drink after
A hangover,
remedy.
hangover food.
Yeah, remedy. Yeah.
Very hearty.
But Quebec is a very, very pretty city. I thought
very
it's
pretty.
beautiful,
Very pretty.
nice.
Trip 25 to Austin, Texas, thanks to DJ and Julie
Yep.
We stayed with them.
and their dogs. They're giant horses that live in their house. Well
They're sweet.
behaved.
Yeah.
They're just
Yeah,
really
we had a
good.
nice time. They were great hosts.
Then they have a huge house,
And they have a huge house.
plenty of room for
Yeah.
us. Tried to
Oh,
learn how
that's
to
right,
two-step,
two-step.
dance.
Yeah, we
Honky tonk bars, and we went and saw the bats come out from under
Oh,
the
yes,
bridge.
yes.
Yeah.
We went tubing there, too.
We
Yeah,
did
we
go
did.
tubing. Yeah.
But it wasn't nearly as fun as
No, it
Scottsdale, in my
wasn't.
opinion.
No.
No.
They still had flip flops.
Yeah, it was. Still,
We played Cards Against Humanity.
Oh,
Yes, you
did.
did.
That was-
We did.
that's a shocking
That's a-
game.
that-
It was a little uncomfortable at times.
Some of the-
yes.
some of the questions were like-
questions, yeah.
Awkward. 26, San Diego.
There were a lot of homeless there.
Yeah, there were right outside
A lot of
the
smelled population.
Airbnb where we stayed. When we pulled up late at night, there was a guy out there, and he smelled heavily of odor and urine. And
So I think we had 2 bedrooms there, and then they had like a little window.
Oh, that's
seat,
right.
And it was made up as a bed. Well, I am obviously the shortest person, so I said, oh, okay, I guess I'll take this window bed here. So I did, and the first morning at like 4:30 in the morning, right outside, I heard all the trash trucks are coming and everything is banging, and it's like, whoa, what's going on here? But anyway, it was a comfortable accommodation.
And there's a restaurant there that apparently is famous because in the women's bathroom, it's a big mural of what's his name?
Ryan Reynolds.
Ryan Reynolds?
I don't remember who
Well,
it
whatever
was,
it was,
gosh,
it's some
yeah.
good-looking Hollywood person. So we went down and snapped ourselves
but
in that
not
bathroom.
Not Mike Peach.
But I just don't
Is
remember.
it-
Yeah, it's beautiful. We went to the zoo, the San Diego Zoo,
Yeah, we
which
did,
is
yeah.
gorgeous, tremendous. And we went to Coronado Island, which gorgeous, very expensive. Yeah, the Coronado Hotel, very old, famous kind of place. Which, side note, my son, who's in the Navy, is moving to San Diego next year, and that's where he's going to be stationed on Coronado.
But that was all. We also got to go along the pier where the big ships were
Yes.
Oh,
parked.
and do you remember the lady? There were the piano out in the
Yes,
street, and we
yes.
were doing
Oh, yeah,
chopsticks.
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
And then this lady comes up and she starts playing like beautiful
Yeah,
piano
concert
pieces.
piano.
Yes.
Yes, that was neat.
Yeah.
But that's where that giant statue is of the sailor kissing
The nurse.
Oh, yes.
After World War II.
But I mean,
Yes.
it's huge. That was fun.
that was neat. 27, Deep Creek Lake,
Oh
Maryland.
yeah.
I went there as a kid. I grew up in Maryland, by the way, not a fellow Ohioan. And so my husband and I have a place there. So the ladies came. My brother lives in the area that we live, and since then we've discovered that we live very near Flight 93. So as a part of 9/11, we've been there a couple times, but there's not, if you like hiking, there's stuff like that to salute.
yeah.
It's gorgeous.
It's a
Yep.
beautiful home.
Yep.
And so that was nice because it was very relaxing, at
Very
least for me.
relaxing.
'Cause
We took archery lessons.
We did.
Oh, we
That's
did.
right.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yes.
Then comes 2020 and the pandemic, which was the one and only time we were not able to take a trip. In 2021, we were back at it again and went back once again to New York City and stayed at the Hotel Edison in the Theater District, which was
Cool.
a lovely location.
Lovely old hotel too.
was a great
really
trip.
good.
Very old
Right.
Yeah.
hotel.
Yeah.
So we saw Come From Away with your
Jim Walton,
Your friends.
the guy we knew, family we knew from our high school, our hometown, and his niece, Bob's daughter. And then after we came out of the show, Jim said he'd meet us outside afterwards just so I could introduce the girls to him. And Bob happened to be across the street waiting for his daughter. So I got to talk to Bob, which was awesome. Bob and I used to do singing stuff together and things in high school, so that was fun. And then what was the other? Oh,
Hadestown.
which one of those two did you guys like better?
I can't say I liked any either better. They were two
So different.
shows.
Totally
Yeah, They
different.
were just both really good in their own right.
It's based on,
Greek mythology.
yes, Persephone
Yeah.
and
The other one.
the other-
Todd. No, it was
Yeah.
beautifully
The
done.
music was
oh
incredible.
my gosh, yes.
Yeah, so good. And the view.
Ugh.
It was disappointing.
was
It
an
was
experience.
it was an experience. I'm glad we experienced it, but it was disappointing.
Yes.
Oh, those women.
Which is how you knew that they didn't just show up mid-show with COVID. No. Seriously?
Yeah.
Whatever.
And John also met us there, so we got to spend time
Right.
Oh, he was
with
delightful,
nephew John, who's trying to
Yes.
make it in New York
Yeah.
City, so that was fun.
Who also joined us for Mass at
Yeah,
St.
he-
Patrick's
yeah, we went to
Cathedral.
Oh,
St.
yes,
Pat's,
that's
yeah.
right.
And then we went to that dinner show.
The dinner show, right?
Christine.
Oh, yeah.
Christine.
Yeah.
Oh, the one down under the
Yes.
Studio 54. Yeah, we saw. Yeah, that was fun. It did dinner.
Art museum tour.
Oh, yes, the art museum tour.
Yeah.
The private
We had
tour.
a private tour.
We paid some bucks to have a private tour of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. So she was an art student, history major, and took us all through the museum and explained about each bit of art. It was fascinating.
Things that you wouldn't get by just walking around and looking at pictures.
Well worth the
Yeah, it was
the
worth
money.
the money we paid for it. But we didn't have any trouble with
Didn't
anything
have any
like that.
issues.
So that was a great trip.
And that brings us to, drum roll, trip number 29, Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Yeah, I
And
know.
here we are.
So I will say, on this trip, we went into a store that Robin recommended called Boutique
Boutique.
Yeah.
in Roanoke. And there were two girls that were running it, and I assume they were sisters. They looked a lot alike.
Yeah.
So Meg is the first one in the store, I think, and she found this table that had all these ridiculously funny coasters. And she's laughing.
I mean, she's crying.
Crying laughing, reading these things.
One
I'm
after the
across
other.
the store and I'm hearing her laugh and cry at the same time.
So we all walk over there to see what's going on. Then we're all howling. And the girls that were there in the store said something about like when we left, we want to hang out with you guys. And we were telling them the story of how many years we've done this and all this stuff. And the one girl goes, I'm dead. And I was thinking, what does that mean? But I think it was a compliment.
Yeah. I think it was a
It was a
compliment.
compliment.
It was a
I'm
compliment.
just dead.
So we go to check out and give the girl a credit card, and we explained about the accounting system that we have on our credit card, and she was just like, that is so cool. So again, planning,
just dead.
planting another seed.
She was dead.
She was
She was
dead.
dead.
But she was alive enough to run our card. So, and it's not about the destination. It's just about us being together and sharing.
We're blessed.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
are.
absolutely. We love we.
That's our motto.